What do they call you? Wheels?
Hey everyone, it's Will here, and today I have some news. After 3 long months, 51 issues, and 12 live streams from yours truly, the Age of Revelation event is finally over. And I've been thinking, what's the best way to commemorate my coverage of this event? I think I've finally come to the best answer, which is ranking every Age of Revelation book. Now, a quick disclaimer, if you happen to watch this video and you are someone who has worked on any of these books, please do not take my personal opinion too personally. It's nothing against your own talent or your effort. It's just how the final product has come out, and I'm sure you've all done great work beside these books. Now, before I jump in and start ranking all 17, yes, 17 different series, I think it's probably good to explain a bit about my ranking system, starting with the top tier, Krakoa 2.0, which I think is pretty self-explanatory, but essentially I think the Krakoan era was a gold standard in terms of quality. So if your book is here, then I think your book is a great book and is a good successor from that era. The next tier is the Claremontian subtext tier, which I think perfectly encapsulates the good to great rank, mostly because Claremontian subtext really adds to Claremont stories. It's good, I'm glad it's there, but it's not perfect. And what's better than Claremontian subtext? The real text. So it's being held back just a little bit, but I still really appreciate it. For the third rank, we have Alex Summers Core, and this is probably best explained by asking, how do you rank Havoc as a character? For me, I think Havoc perfectly personifies mid. No shade to any Havoc fans out there. And that's why that's the third rank. The next tier you don't want to be in is Forget Me Yes. This is just for the books that are forgettable or books I want to forget. And finally, the worst tier is I'd rather read the Draco, which I think is quite self-explanatory. If a book is in this tier, that means I'd rather read the Draco. And if you don't know what the Draco is, well, it's probably the most hated X-Men story in the entire universe. It's the story that introduced Azazel as Nightcrawler's father, and for a time being, ruined any chance for Destiny and Mystique to be Nightcrawler's actual parents, as Chris Claremont intended. The story has since been retconned, but it doesn't make it any less of a bad story, and you really don't want to be aiming to get into this category. So we're just going to go through these books in release order, starting with Amazing X-Men from Jed MacKay and Mahmoud Asrar. Now, I think this book has an unfair advantage because Jed MacKay is the Age of Revelation architect. He's leading this event, he's writing the main story, so this book has the biggest main plot of the entire series, which follows past Cyclops and past Beast as they find themselves in the future, picking up directly from the first issue and taking it all the way to the final issue. So it's necessary reading, but it is still a really enjoyable book. I think the art is amazing, and it also gets extra points because WizKid is in this book as well, and I'm a bit biased. I'm a WizKid stan. So this book automatically goes to Krakoa 2.0 because it is a really solid book. And if you care about just reading the main story of Age of Revelation, you need to read this book. Next, we have Binary by Stephanie Phillips and Giada Belviso, which is all about Captain Marvel as the Phoenix and how she is using her powers to protect her hometown from the X virus and other things. I think it's an interesting concept. I enjoyed the re-emphasis on Jean is the Phoenix and the Phoenix is Jean, so even though Jean is dead, she is still there. But I just find the inclusion of Captain Marvel and making Captain Marvel the Phoenix just so odd. I don't really buy the Jean Carol friendship. Maybe that's just me. It was nice to see Maddie again though, and to be fair, Maddie made several points. Like I'm on Team Maddie. She's like, you're using the Phoenix just to save this town. That's a waste of the Phoenix. I will say, Giada Belviso's art is stunning, beautiful. I wish she was on the Phoenix book.
Okay, great gowns, beautiful gowns.
So for that alone, I think the art carries it all the way to Alex Summers Core. Oh boy, next we have Laura Kinney's Sabretooth by Erica Schultz and Valentina Pinti. Now, in the Age of Revelation future, Laura has taken on the mantle of Sabretooth and is one of Revelation's key seraphim. The reason why she's Sabretooth, well, it turns out that she fell in love with Sabretooth's son that we've never seen called Zane, but then Zane is killed, and then Laura has a baby with him called Alex. This whole taking on the mantle of Sabretooth works in concept, but isn't executed well because we don't care about this same because we never see him. He's like a dead wife in one of the Taken films, so that isn't really a strong selling point. We do get to see Akihiro and Gabi here, which is fun, but then what really tops this whole off is the ending of this book, which is just completely insane. You don't see it coming, and I say that in a bad way. It's so rushed and just happens out of nowhere. Essentially, while on Arako, Alex, Laura's son, develops his mutant powers and he explodes with energy and kills everyone in the vicinity. So that means Laura is dead, Akihiro is dead, Gabi is dead. The only person still left alive is Apocalypse, who turns up and goes, you're going to be great one day. You can be one of my most trusted soldiers or whatever. And then Alex is left to cradle his dead mum's body and cry. Just feels very rushed, incomprehensible, sort of. So that's why I have to put Laura Kinney Sabretooth in. I'd rather read the Draco because I was often just left scratching my head. But I know Erica Schultz can do great work. I really enjoyed actually Laura Kinney Wolverine. So I think this might just be a case of rushed timeline and having to fit it all into 3 issues. Next, we have the famed return of Jonathan Hickman and Jerry Duggan, 2 Krakoa era writers, to do long shots with art by Alan Robinson. However, I don't think this really worked that well. It's essentially all about Mojo and him deciding to create one final TV show in this apocalyptic future. But there's not really many X-Men characters. The only X-Men character is Bishop, who is killed off, and the main characters are Hellcat and Wonder Man. And no shade to Hellcat and Wonder Man, but I just don't care about them. I really don't care. And the meta jokes, some of them work, but most of them don't, and it just feels flat. And it feels like a fun exercise for Jonathan and Jerry, but it doesn't really hit as a good story that I enjoy, which is disappointing. I wanted to enjoy this a lot more than I did. So I'm just going to have to put it in Forget Me Yes, because I will forget. In 3 weeks, I'll long shots who. Next, we're on to the one-shot World of Revelation, which featured 3 stories from Al Ewing, from Steve Fox, and from Ryan North. The Al Ewing story is by and far the best of the 3 stories. It's focused on what happened to the message that Bay sent to Apocalypse and how he received that. We see that there is a messenger who receives that message on Arako, and we then get a tour of Arako 10 years into the future as the messenger travels to Apocalypse's new base, which is the Autumn Palace, which was formerly the home of Magneto. And then we get the reveal that the messenger is none other than Charles Xavier. And we get to see a bit of an interaction between Apocalypse and Charles, and it's just a beautiful story. I think the art was beautiful. It just felt like such an epilogue to Al Ewing's work on X-Men Red and Arako. We got to see Weaponless Zen, we saw the Morrowland, mentions of Craig of NASA, Storm's ex-boyfriend. Apocalypse even has a line about if only he'd chosen Richter, which I think is a bit of meta-commentary there from Al as well. The other 2 stories, the one by Steve Fox is about Wiccan and Hulkling, and Wiccan becoming a Babel so he can't communicate at all, and Hulkling doing whatever he can to try and fix it, and he can't, and that's just really sad. And the other one is from Ryan North about Franklin Richards, whose whole family is killed by the X virus, and he becomes this like weird blood monster thing. And then he ultimately dies as well. So the other 2 stories are really sad. They are good, just not as good as the Al Ewing story. So combining that all together, Claremontian subtext. And I would say that the Al Ewing story is actually quite important just to get a bit more context of the Apocalypse's side of things for the main event. Then we're on to Unbreakable X-Men by Gail Simone with art originally by Lucas Wernick. Now, what to say about Unbreakable X-Men? Well, I guess Gambit is the main character, and he's dealing with grief from Rogue absorbing Galactus and becoming a giant statue. But then the Shuravak monster that lives underneath the Haven house comes back and wants to end the world and create loads of suffering because of all the hatred that humans have, and then ends up fighting Namor. So then Gambit and the Outliers have to all fight Namor. Surprise, surprise, Rogue is alive again because Deathstream sacrificed his immortality. But that all happened off screen and you never see that. You just see Rogue come back to just rip off the demon's head, and then Rogue is back to normal. So yeah, I really have to put this in mid-core. I think strong points, the character work. I think the interactions between characters are fun, but I think a lot of it is just very rushed, very out of nowhere. Why are we fighting Namor? I feel like Namor wasn't really relevant. He didn't need to be there.
Why would a man be there? Why would a man be there?
I think the whole surprise of Rogue being alive or coming back to life should have had more build-up, and we should have seen Deathstream trade his life. If it was a bit flat, so it's going to be mid-core. Next, we have Iron and Frost by Cavan Scott with art by Ruari Coleman, and it's obviously about Emma Frost and Iron Man. But after an incident, Emma loses her heart, so she has to stay in diamond form and then goes on the hunt to try and find Tony Stark to help give her a new heart. It turns out, though, Iron Man is an actual Iron Man now. He's literally a robot and he doesn't care about humanity or emotions or anything like that. War Machine is also there, but he gets killed off by Robot Iron Man, which is not fun. And then it all ends actually really sad, but they all just die. But then there is a sort of tease that maybe things can be undone with a time travel plot that I don't enjoy, because why are we doing a time travel plot within a time travel plot? But this one is not going to make any difference to anything, so I include it. I will say I thought the art was pretty fun, and I enjoyed Emma's new black outfit, but she also sometimes feels secondary to the story. And I don't really care for Iron Man in that way, but it does really build up the idea that Emma and Tony really love each other. And there's a bit where Emma's saying, my Anthony, and I'm like, ooh, kind of a bit gross.
Disgusting!
Like, I liked their relationship, and I liked the whole, oh, we're going to fake a relationship, but we actually kind of fell in love with each other. But I just don't buy it long term. I just don't see them working for long term, you know? So, going to put that in Forget Me, yes. We're then on to Rogue Storm by Muwei Ayodele with art by Roland Boshi, and this story is about Storm, but it's also about Rogue, or more specifically Rogue Red. Now, clearly Muwei wanted Rogue in his story, but Rogue was going to die in Unbreakable X-Men, so he created his own by having Rogue be cloned, and so we have Rogue Red instead, which is just a bit of comic book silliness, I suppose.
Hey twin! Hey twin! Hey twin!
Essentially, it seems like Storm is trying to kill the world by inducing climate change. I mean, she's literally made the Sahara Desert a frozen tundra. So Rogue assembles a uncanny X-Force team to take her down. That's set 5 years into the future, but then 10 years into the future, we also see Storm still alive, taking on some mystical forces. Now, in the first issue, it was an interesting timeline confusion, but the second issue really straightened things out for me, and it had a really good, interesting twist. I also think the art is really good by Roland Boshi. I think it's really gritty and a bit darker and more grounded, because the story is a bit more grounded. It's still mystical, but it's not really as cosmic as her previous issues have been. I guess the one downside is that the ending is sort of a cliffhanger, which says will be continued in the finale, but you don't even see Storm in the finale. So that was just a lie. But with that, I'm going to put Rogue Storm in Clementine subtext. I think it was a really strong book there. Then we have Sinister's 6, written by Uncanny X-Men artist David Marquez with art by Rafael Nuero. This story is essentially Hellions 2.0, with Sinister assembling a team of mutants that sort of need his help. The team consists of Havoc, Domino, Lady Phantom X, Omega Red, Black Cat, who looks a lot like Hepzibah and wish was just Hepzibah, but whatever, and also Venom. And they've all been mutated by the X-Virus and are struggling, so Sinister is trying to help them, and he sends them on a mission to uncover some truths about Revelation, but it obviously all goes wrong because this team just flops. But I actually think David Marquez has a good handle on all of these characters, and I think has an interesting story. It was really quite enjoyable for what it was. There's also a massive revelation about who Venom is. Spoiler alert, it's Polaris, who we thought was dead after giving birth to her baby with Havoc. I guess after Mary Jane is Venom, anyone could be Venom, so I'm going to put it in Alex Summers' core, and I think part of that is because Alex Summers is in this book, and he's the main character. Now we're on to X-Men Book of Revelation, which is the second book by Jed MacKay, this time with art by Neto Diaz. Again, this book has an unfair advantage because it is core to the main series. It's from the perspective of Doug, however, Revelation and his inner circle, his choristers. We see the introduction of a new character, El Becca, but there are some twists and turns, and we see betrayals, and we see the return of Kitty Pryde as well. And I think this book does those twists and turns really well. Really loved it. Was gasping at the end of issue 1 and issue 2. I think Jed gets a real understanding of Doug, the way his powers work, and the way he thinks about language in general, which I just thought was really interesting, particularly in issue 3. I think it might even be stronger than Amazing X-Men. So for that reason alone, it has to go in Krakoa 2.0, but I'll put it at the top. Then we're on to Omega Kids by Tony Fleeks with art by Andre Genollet. And if you'd have told me 6 months ago that there'd be a Quentin Quire book out, and I would actually, spoilers, enjoy it, I would have slapped you in the face and called you a liar. This book, in essence, is about Quentin leading the spy network of the Revelation Territories, the Omega Kids, who are all mutant psychics who spy on their parents and people around them to uncover rebels or secret plots, etc., etc. And surprisingly, there's a bunch of twists in this book as well. Really interesting applications of psychics and how their powers work and the astral plane. Some new characters as well, the Omega Kids themselves. One in particular, Bailey, an 8-year-old sociopath. Really interesting character. I think it has, yeah, a real interesting story that proper surprised me. And I really wish Tony Fleets could be involved in some future X-Men books along the way. So for this story alone, as a standalone, I have to put it in Krakoa 2.0. Next, we're on to Radioactive Spider-Man, written by Joe Kelly, the current Amazing Spider-Man writer, with art by Kev Walker. So this story essentially follows Peter Parker 10 years into the future, as he's now a mutant with several extra arms. He's also dying, but he's also dating Cecilia Reyes, the mutant X-Man, which is such an odd pairing, but I kind of like it. And I suppose the main thrust of this story is that he was not the only Spider-Man character to be affected by the X-Virus. No, it turns out that Aunt May herself is a mutant, but she's a giant mutant monster that literally just kills people, including Mary Jane. And so the book proposes this interesting dilemma about saving the people that you love at the expense of other people's lives and their safety. And I just think it's a really powerful character story as well about Peter Parker and his relationship to Aunt May. I think if you're reading the current Amazing Spider-Man series, you should also read this as a addendum, as a side dish, because I think it really is a good character exploration of their dynamic. And I think that that's the perfect way to do a event tie-in when you're not really involved in the main goings on. It's just to look at a character and explore them in some way. I think it was really a moving, powerful book, and everyone else should be taking notes on how to do a miniseries like this. And so for that, a Spider-Man book in an X-Men event, that has to go to Claremontian subtext. Oh boy. Now we're on to The Last Wolverine by Saladin Ahmed with art by Edgar Salazar, which is all about Leonard taking over the Wolverine mantle from Logan, who has become the Angel of Death for Revelation, blah blah blah, that's a long story. Anyway, this story is all about Leonard teaming up with Nightcrawler and Heather Hudson, who is also Wolverine's wife in this reality, to try and rescue Logan from the clutches of Revelation. That's pretty much it. I've kind of felt this story is a bit boring. I don't particularly care for Leonard, the Wendigo, not someone I'm particularly interested in. Also, we do see a human Nightcrawler, an old human Nightcrawler. Even though he should be about 40 in this reality, he looks about 65.
28. The new 58.
I think the fact that we had to see an old, ugly human Nightcrawler is a crime against humanity, and people need to be jailed. Just saying, just putting that out there. I wish I could forget this book, but unfortunately, human Nightcrawler is going to haunt me forever, so it has to go in I'd rather read the Draco. We're on to the final 4 books now, starting with Expatriate X-Men by Eve Ewing with art by Francesco Mortorino, and this book follows some of the younger X-Men grown up, namely Miss Marvel, Bronze, Melee and Rift, as they lead a flotilla being actual X-Men along the border of the Revelation territories and what's left of America. I think this book does in part improve on some of the issues I had with Exceptional, namely the pace. Things are happening, things are getting done, and I really enjoy that. I think there are some good action scenes, particularly in issue 1, and as usual for an Eve Ewing book, I think the character work was really strong. So for that alone, you'd think I'd put this in Krakoa 2. But we have to talk about issue 3. So as part of the story, the team are making their way to the Limbo Lands with a new character, Lyrebird, who needs to go to Limbo Lands for some reason. Between Doug joining the X-Men and Magic getting murdered, Magic somehow met Lyrebird, and then they had a child together. First of all, Magic. We've literally never seen Magic with anybody romantically, ever. And now we're going to have her with this nobody character. And they're going to have a child together? Are you serious? That's A, that's crazy. B, we can't even get into all the pregnancy plots. There's 5 pregnancy plots in this entire event. I don't know who's obsessed with babies in the office, but that's too many babies. 3, it's out of nowhere. It's completely out of nowhere. It doesn't make any sense for any of the characters. It doesn't make sense timeline-wise or anything. It really just tanked my feelings towards the book. So I can't put it in Krakoa 2. I'm going to put it in Claremontian subtext. I almost want to put it in Alex Summers Court just for the fact alone of that final issue curveball. It also I also feel like the ball is sort of dropped with the ending. Some of the other plots are just sort of pushed to the side, all about this magic baby plot, which I just think is ludicrous, is absolutely insane, should not be happening. I'm going to put it in Claremontian subtext just because I really did enjoy the first 2 issues. Speaking of baby plots, we're then on to Cloak or Dagger by Justina Ireland and Lorenzo Tometa. This book is Marvel Rivals Synergy. In the 10 years since the Age of Revelation started, Cloak and Dagger have been affected by the X virus and essentially become intertwined, so they can't exist on the same plane at the same time. So they switch places, much like they do in the Marvel Rivals video game. However, I actually think this is quite an interesting story. It's pretty low stakes, but I think Justina Ireland does a good job with it. I think introducing Fenris as the villains, as a sort of a mirror to them, is pretty interesting. The story is not that groundbreaking, but I do appreciate the dynamics between Cloak or Dagger and the introduction of their baby, Ayla, who is stuck in the in-between, the place that Cloak or Dagger goes to, but there's some interesting revelations about her, and her inclusion in the story is actually a good one. That is a baby plot I appreciate. Justina, you did your big one with that. Although I'm not really familiar with Cloak or Dagger, this series has made me more interested in them as characters. Maybe we'll see Cloak or Dagger finally become proper mutants in 2026. They have actually been members of X-Men already, so, you know, what is there to lose? But I thought this was a solid book. A solid book, not pushing the boundaries, but it's not falling below either. So going straight into Alex Summers' court there. Down to our final 2 books, we're on to Undeadpool by Tim Seeley with art by Carlos Magno. This is all about Deadpool, obviously, who has been mutated by the X virus to become a zombie who is hungry for mutant flesh. And we see in the very first issue, he literally eats 3 members of this new young mutant team called the Alpha Defenders. The only one left is Fearless, a blind mutant with a telepathy ability. And then they go on a journey together because Fearless wants to be a member of the Expatriate X-Men, and things don't go exactly as planned. Now, I gotta say, in the very first issue, I was not feeling this book whatsoever.
I don't want to play with you anymore.
I thought the whole thing with Deadpool being a zombie and not actually being able to talk, it was a lot of captions, but no talking because he was too busy going, brains. But with issue 2 and issue 3 and the dynamic between him and Fearless, I really started to enjoy the book. The twist as well, it kind of comes out of nowhere, but in a way that you can go, and it all just makes sense. And I think the final issue has a message that I feel is quite poignant, quite an important one to remember, which is that there must be more to life than just surviving, which I think we all need to try and remember that sometimes. So with that alone, I have to put it in Claremontian subtext, which is shocking to me because after that first issue, I would have put it in Forget Me Yes. But that third issue really did wonders, and it tells a complete story. It tells a complete story, beginning, middle, end, has some good payoff for characters, etc., etc. I just thought it was a solid book. And now we're down to the final book, X-Vengers by Jason Lowe, with art by Sergio Davila. Oh, what to say about X-Vengers? This book is all about mutant Avengers, which sounds fun, but then the more you look into it, the more it doesn't. It's essentially Danny Moonstar, who's become Captain America because Steve Rogers died right next to her and decided to give her the mantle. I feel that's just a bit off. I don't think Danny would actually take the mantle of Captain America. But she is leading a new team of Avengers who have become mutants. We've got Variable Man, which is Scott Lang, who's now big and lumpy. Water Widow, who is just Black Widow but made of water. Shang-Chi, who is now so powerful he destroys things with a touch. Hawkeye has 6 arms. Vision is part Technarch Warlock. And there's also Cannonball as well. And essentially they're just being Avengers, rescuing people from both America and the Revelation territories until this mysterious red new virus comes along and starts killing people, and they have to uncover what that's all about. We do get a brief New Mutants reunion in issue 2 between Doug, Danny, Sunspot, and Sam, which I think is really the strong point. I think if the book was more about that and less about these ex-Avengers, the book would be stronger. I'm going to put this in Forget Me Yes, because although I appreciate putting Danny as the lead, I just, again, think the Captain America thing just isn't encountered, and I feel a bit maybe distasteful. And to be fair, I don't care that Scott Lang died. I said it. I don't care. I don't care that Scott Lang died.
You know what? I'm about to say it. Okay. Say it. I don't care that
Scott Lang died. Or Hawkeye. Or Vision. I really don't care. And that's it. That's my ranking of all 17 Age of Revelation miniseries. But what did you think about it? Do you agree with who I put at the top, who I put at the bottom? Let me know your thoughts on my ranking and your own ranking down below in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe if you want to keep up to date with more videos that I'm putting out, particularly as we get into this new era of X-Men Shadows of Tomorrow. And with that, I'll see you all in the next video.